Look at a map of Europe. Right there, off the northwest coast, is a collection of islands that by all logic should have been a footnote in history. Small, rainy, separated from the continent by a cold, grey channel. And yet, for centuries, these islands controlled a quarter of the entire planet. The United Kingdom, 4 nations stitched together by ambition, war, marriage, and stubbornness. England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. Each with its own language, its own grudges, its own version of events. Ask a Scot how the union happened, and you'll get a very different answer from an Englishman. Both are probably right. Both are definitely leaving something out. How did a cluster of rain-soaked islands off Europe's edge build the largest empire the world has ever seen? And how did that empire collapse in a single generation? Invasion, civil war, revolution, industry, 2 world wars, and a stubbornness that borders on the absurd. For centuries, we've had to imagine what those earlier versions of Britain actually looked like. Artist sketches, faded engravings, descriptions in dusty journals. But now, using AI trained on historical imagery, we can take those original drawings and paintings and see them as they might have appeared in real life. The mud-caked Roman roads, the smoke rising from Saxon villages, the charge of cavalry at Naseby. You're about to witness over 2,000 years of history in one video. Sit back and relax as we journey through the incredible history of the United Kingdom. Let's go back to where it all began. Rome comes to Britain. The year is 55 BC. Julius Caesar stands on the coast of Gaul and stares across the channel. He knows there's an island over there. Tin, grain, Celtic warriors who've been helping his enemies in Gaul. He wants to know more. So he sails across with 2 legions. It goes badly. Storm smashes ships. The Britons fight from chariots on the beach. Caesar comes back the next year with a bigger army, pushes inland, wins some battles, takes hostages, and leaves. Britain isn't worth the trouble. Not yet. It takes almost 100 years before Rome tries again. In 43 AD, Emperor Claudius needs a military victory to legitimize his shaky reign. Britain is the target. 4 legions land on the Kent coast, around 40,000 soldiers. Within a few years, they've conquered most of what's now England. Claudius himself rides into the new capital, Camulodunum, modern Colchester, on an elephant. Pure theatre. Roman Britain becomes a proper province. Roads are built that still form the backbone of England's road network. The M1 follows a Roman route. Watling Street runs from London to Wroxeter. Bath gets its famous hot springs complex. London becomes a major port. But the north is a problem. The Caledonians in what's now Scotland refuse to submit. Emperor Hadrian visits in 122 AD and orders a wall built across the entire width of the island. Hadrian's Wall. 73 miles of stone, forts every 5 miles, mile castles, turrets, a ditch on the northern side deep enough to break a charge. It takes 6 years to build. It's not just a wall, it's a statement. This is where civilization ends. Everything beyond is barbarian. For 3.5 centuries, Britain is Roman. Latin is spoken in the towns. Christianity arrives in the 3rd century. Villas with mosaic floors and underfloor heating dot the countryside. But Rome is weakening. By the late 300s, troops are being pulled out to defend the crumbling empire. In 410, Emperor Honorius tells the Britons to look to their own defences. The legions leave, and the lights go out. The Dark Ages. What happens next is messy and poorly documented, which is exactly why historians call it the Dark Ages. Roman infrastructure collapses. Towns empty out. The economy reverts to barter. Into this vacuum come new arrivals from across the North Sea: Angles, Saxons, Jutes, Germanic tribes looking for farmland. Whether they come as invaders or invited mercenaries depends on which source you read. Probably both. Over the 5th and 6th centuries, they gradually pushed the native Britons west and north, into Wales, into Cornwall, into what will become Scotland. The Britons don't go quietly. Somewhere in this era, a war leader fights back against the Saxons. We don't know his real name. Legend will call him Arthur. By the 7th century, England is a patchwork of Anglo-Saxon kingdoms: Northumbria, Mercia, Wessex, East Anglia, Kent, Essex, Sussex, the Heptarchy, historians call it, though it's never really a neat 7. These kingdoms fight each other constantly for dominance. Whoever's strongest claims the title of Bretwalda, overlord of Britain. Christianity returns, this time from 2 directions. From Rome, Augustine arrives in Kent in 597 and converts King Ethelbert. From the north, Irish monks from Iona spread Celtic Christianity. The 2 traditions clash over things like the correct date of Easter. The Synod of Whitby in 664 settles it in Rome's favour. England aligns with the Continental Church. That decision will have consequences for 1,000 years. Meanwhile, Scotland is forming from a merger of Picts and Scots under Kenneth MacAlpin around 843. Wales is a collection of Welsh kingdoms united by language and culture, if not politics. Ireland has its own complex web of kingdoms and monasteries. Then the Vikings arrive, and everything changes again. The Viking Age. In 793, Norse raiders attack the monastery at Lindisfarne, off the Northumbrian coast. Monks are killed or enslaved. The treasures are looted. It sends shockwaves through Christian Europe. But this is just the beginning. Over the next decades, the raids intensify. What starts as hit-and-run piracy becomes full-scale invasion. In 865, a massive force the English call the Great Heathen Army lands in East Anglia. Within a decade, they've conquered Northumbria, Mercia, and East Anglia. 3 of England's 4 major kingdoms, gone. Only Wessex holds out. And barely. In the winter of 878, the Danes launch a surprise attack that forces King Alfred into hiding in the Somerset marshes. The last English kingdom reduced to a king hiding in a swamp. Legend says he burns some cakes while sheltering with a peasant woman. What actually happens is more impressive. Alfred rallies his forces, defeats the Danes at the Battle of Edington, and forces their leader Guthrum to accept baptism and a treaty. The treaty divides England in half. Everything northeast of a line from London to Chester becomes the Danelaw, governed by Norse law. Everything southwest stays English. Alfred doesn't stop there. He builds a network of fortified towns called burhs, creates a navy, reforms the legal code, promotes literacy. He's the only English monarch ever called the Great. He earns it. Alfred's descendants spend the next 80 years reconquering the Danelaw, town by town. His grandson Athelstan finally unites all of England under one crown after the Battle of Brunanburh in 937. England exists as a single kingdom for the first time. But the Vikings aren't done. In 1013, the Danish king Sweyn Forkbeard invades and conquers England outright. His son Canute inherits a North Sea empire that includes England, Denmark, and Norway. For 26 years, England is part of a Scandinavian superpower. When the Danish line dies out, the crown passes to Edward the Confessor in 1042. He builds Westminster Abbey but dies childless in January 1066. That date, 1066, the most famous year in English history, 3 men claim the throne. Harold Godwinson takes it first. Harold Hardrada of Norway invades from the north. Harold marches up, defeats and kills him at Stamford Bridge. 3 days later, William of Normandy lands in the south. Harold rushes his exhausted army back down. They meet at Hastings on October 14th. By nightfall, Harold is dead. England belongs to the Normans, the medieval kingdom. William the Conqueror doesn't just take the throne, he replaces the entire ruling class. Anglo-Saxon lords are stripped of their lands. Norman barons move in. French becomes the language of the court and the law. English becomes the language of peasants. It takes 300 years for English to recover as a language of power. When it does, it's transformed, stuffed full of French vocabulary. That's why English has cow from the Saxon farmer and beef from the Norman who ate it. William orders the Domesday Book in 1086, a complete survey of every piece of land, every animal, every asset in England. Nothing like it exists anywhere in Europe. It's a tax document, yes, but also a statement of total control. The next few centuries are defined by a power struggle between the crown and the barons. Henry II builds a legal system that becomes the foundation of English common law. But he also has Thomas Becket, Archbishop of Canterbury, murdered in his own cathedral in 1170. Knights who took the king's angry words too literally. Richard the Lionheart spends almost his entire reign fighting crusades or languishing in foreign prisons. His brother John runs England in his absence, runs it badly. In 1215, the barons corner him at Runnymede and force him to sign the Magna Carta. It's not a democracy document. It's a deal between the king and his aristocrats. But the principle it establishes, that the king is not above the law, will echo through every constitutional document that follows, including yours, if you're American. Meanwhile, Wales is being conquered. Edward I invades in the 1270s and 1280s, building a ring of massive castles, Caernarfon, Conwy, Harlech, Beaumaris, to lock the Welsh down permanently. He names his son Prince of Wales, a title English heirs have held ever since. Wales is absorbed. Scotland is another story. Edward I tries the same approach and gets Robert the Bruce. At Bannockburn in 1314, the Scots hand the English one of their most humiliating defeats. Scotland remains independent. That independence will last another 400 years. Then comes the Black Death in 1348. It kills somewhere between a third and half the population of the British Isles. Villages are wiped out entirely. Some are never reoccupied. But the survivors find themselves in demand. Labour is scarce. Wages rise. The feudal system begins to crack. The Peasants' Revolt of 1381 is crushed, but the old order is dying. The 15th century brings the Wars of the Roses, Lancaster versus York, Red Rose versus White, decades of civil war between rival branches of the royal family, battles, betrayals, murdered princes in the Tower. It ends in 1485 when Henry Tudor defeats Richard III at Bosworth Field and takes the crown. He unites the two houses and founds the Tudor dynasty. England is about to be transformed beyond recognition. The Tudors. Henry VII is careful, calculating, and obsessed with money. He stabilizes the kingdom after decades of civil war, but it's his son who changes everything. Henry VIII. 6 wives, 2 beheaded, 1 died, 2 divorced, 1 survived. Every schoolchild knows the rhyme, but the wives are a sideshow to the real story. Henry wants a male heir. The Pope won't grant him a divorce from Catherine of Aragon. So Henry does something extraordinary. He breaks with Rome entirely, declares himself supreme head of the Church of England, dissolves the monasteries, seizes their wealth. It's the single most radical political act in English history. In one stroke, he cuts England off from the Catholic world it's been part of for 1,000 years. The consequences are still playing out today. The Church of England exists because one king wanted a divorce. Henry's son, Edward VI, pushes England further. Protestant. His daughter Mary I yanks it back to Catholicism and burns nearly 300 Protestants at the stake, earning the nickname Bloody Mary. Then, Elizabeth I takes the throne in 1558 and finds a middle way. Protestant enough for the reformers, Catholic enough in its rituals to avoid another civil war. Barely. Elizabeth's reign is extraordinary. Shakespeare writes his plays. Drake sails around the world. The Spanish Armada, the mightiest fleet in Europe, sails up the Channel in 1588 to invade England. Storms and English fireships destroy it. England survives. A small island has beaten the world's superpower. The myth of English exceptionalism is born right here. But Elizabeth dies childless in 1603, and something unexpected happens. James VI of Scotland becomes James I of England. The Scottish king inherits the English throne. 2 ancient enemies now share a monarch. They don't particularly like it, but it's a start. Revolution. James I believes in the divine right of kings. His son Charles I believes it even more. Parliament disagrees. The tension between a king who thinks he answers only to God and a parliament that controls the money supply is a bomb waiting to explode. In 1642, it explodes. Civil war. Royalists versus parliamentarians. Cavaliers versus Roundheads. Father against son. Brother against brother. It tears through England, Scotland, Ireland, and Wales. Oliver Cromwell builds the new model army, the first professional standing army in English history, and destroys the royalist cause. In January 1649, something happens that shocks all of Europe. King Charles I is tried, convicted, and beheaded outside the banqueting house in Whitehall. A king executed by his own people. The divine right of kings, severed at the neck. England becomes a republic, the Commonwealth. Cromwell runs it, first as chairman, then essentially as military dictator under the title Lord Protector. He conquers Ireland with brutal efficiency, massacring the garrisons at Drogheda and Wexford. The scars in Ireland last to this day. But the Republic doesn't last. When Cromwell dies in 1658, his son can't hold it together. By 1660, the English are exhausted. They invite the dead king's son back. Charles II returns from exile. The monarchy is restored. The experiment is over. Or is it? In 1688, it happens again, but differently. James II, a Catholic king trying to re-Catholicize a Protestant country, is too much. Parliament invites the Dutch Prince William of Orange to invade. James flees. William and Mary take the throne. It's called the Glorious Revolution because almost no one dies. In England, at least. Ireland is a different, bloodier story. The real revolution is the Bill of Rights of 1689. Parliament is supreme. The monarch rules only with Parliament's consent. No standing army without approval. No taxes without a vote. Every democracy in the world owes something to this moment. Union and empire. In 1707, England and Scotland merge their parliaments. The Acts of Union create the Kingdom of Great Britain. Scotland keeps its own legal system, its own church, its own education. But the two countries now share one parliament in London. The Scots get access to English trade routes and colonies. England gets a secure northern border. Not everyone is happy. Many Scots see it as a sellout. Bought and sold for English gold, writes Robert Burns, decades later. The Jacobite risings try to reverse it. Bonnie Prince Charlie marches his Highland army as far south as Derby in 1745, just 125 miles from London. Panic grips the capital. But the Jacobites turn back. At Culloden in 1746, they're destroyed. The Highland way of life is systematically dismantled. Tartan banned. Clan chiefs turned into landlords. The Gaelic-speaking Highlands, broken. Britain looks outward. The Royal Navy dominates the seas. Colonies spread across North America, the Caribbean, India, Africa. The East India Company isn't just a trading firm. It's a private army with its own foreign policy. By the mid-1700s, Britain and France are fighting for global supremacy. The 7 Years' War, from 1756 to 1763, is the real First World War, fought on 5 continents. Britain wins. Canada and India become British. Then Britain loses America. The 13 colonies, taxed without representation, revolt in 1776. Britain's most prosperous colonies, gone. But the empire doesn't shrink. It pivots. India becomes the new jewel. Australia becomes a penal colony. By 1800, the empire is bigger than ever. In 1801, Ireland's parliament is dissolved and Ireland joins the United Kingdom. Irish Catholics are promised equal rights. The promise is broken for nearly 30 years. Then comes Napoleon. For over a decade, Britain faces an existential threat. France controls most of Europe. Only the Channel and the Royal Navy stand between Napoleon and invasion. At Trafalgar, in 1805, Nelson destroys the French fleet and dies on his own quarterdeck. At Waterloo, in 1815, Wellington finishes the job. Napoleon is exiled. Britain is the last great power standing. The century that follows belongs to Britain. Workshop of the world. The Industrial Revolution starts in Britain, and it starts here for a reason. Coal, iron, water, capital, a legal system that protects property and patents, and a population displaced from the land by enclosures, desperate enough to work in factories. By 1800, Manchester is the world's first industrial city. Cotton mills powered by steam engines run day and night. Children as young as 5 work 16-hour shifts. The air is black with soot. Life expectancy in some industrial neighborhoods drops to 17 years. But production is exploding. Britain manufactures more than any country on Earth. The railways transform everything. In 1830, the Liverpool and Manchester Railway opens. By 1850, 6,000 miles of track crisscross the country. Time itself changes. Before railways, every town keeps its own local time. The trains need a standard schedule, so Greenwich Mean Time becomes the national standard. Britain literally tells the world what time it is. Queen Victoria takes the throne in 1837 at age 18. She reigns for 63 years. The Victorian era is defined by contradictions, extraordinary wealth and devastating poverty, scientific progress and rigid morality, global power and domestic squalor. The Great Exhibition of 1851 in the Crystal Palace showcases British supremacy. Meanwhile, children are dying in workhouses a few miles away. The empire expands relentlessly. After the Indian Rebellion of 1857, the British government takes direct control from the East India Company. Victoria becomes Empress of India in 1876. Africa is carved up at the Berlin Conference of 1884. By 1900, the British Empire covers a quarter of the world's land surface and governs a quarter of its population. At home, the franchise slowly expands. The Reform Acts of 1832, 1867, and 1884 extend voting rights to more men, not women, not yet. Trade unions form. The labour movement grows. The old aristocratic order is being challenged, slowly, from below. But the 19th century ends with a warning. The Boer War in South Africa turns into an embarrassing slog. Britain wins but badly. Concentration camps for Boer civilians shock the world. The empire looks less invincible than it used to. The world at war. August 1914. Britain enters the First World War after Germany invades Belgium. It's supposed to be over by Christmas. It lasts 4 years and kills nearly 1 million British and Commonwealth soldiers. The Somme, Passchendaele, Gallipoli, names that become synonyms for futile slaughter. An entire generation of young men is wiped out. Every village in Britain has its war memorial. The class system cracks. After the war, universal male suffrage comes in 1918. Women over 30 get the vote the same year. Ireland erupts. The Easter Rising of 1916. The War of Independence. In 1922, Ireland is partitioned. 26 counties become the Irish Free State. 6 counties in the north, with a Protestant majority, stay in the United Kingdom. Northern Ireland is born. The border will be a source of conflict for the rest of the century. The interwar years are grim. Depression, mass unemployment, the general strike of 1926, the rise of fascism on the continent. Chamberlain flies to Munich in 1938 and comes back waving a piece of paper. Peace in our time. Within a year, Hitler invades Poland. September 1939. Britain is at war again. This time, the war comes home. The Blitz. From September 1940 to May 1941, German bombers pound British cities almost every night. London, Coventry, Liverpool, Plymouth. Over 40,000 civilians killed. But Britain doesn't surrender. Churchill's speeches become the soundtrack of defiance. The country holds on alone until the Soviet Union and America join the fight. Victory comes in 1945, but Britain is shattered, bankrupt, exhausted. The empire, which required money and military force to maintain, is no longer affordable. India gains independence in 1947. Over the next 2 decades, colony after colony breaks free. The empire that took centuries to build collapses in a single generation. A new Britain. The post-war Labour government transforms the country. The National Health Service is founded in 1948. Free healthcare for everyone. The welfare state expands. Council housing rises from the rubble. It's the most radical peacetime transformation in British history. Immigration changes the face of the nation. The Windrush arrives from Jamaica in 1948. Waves follow from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, the Caribbean, Africa. They come to fill labour shortages. They build the NHS, drive the buses, run the restaurants. They face discrimination and hostility, but they stay, and they reshape what it means to be British. The 1960s bring cultural revolution. The Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Carnaby Street. For a brief moment, a bombed-out, rationed, grey country becomes the coolest place on earth. Then the 1970s hit hard. Economic crisis, power cuts, rubbish in the streets, the winter of discontent. In 1979, Margaret Thatcher becomes the first female Prime Minister. She breaks the unions, privatizes industries, deregulates finance. Entire communities in the north are devastated. Whether she saved or destroyed Britain depends entirely on who you ask. Northern Ireland is tearing itself apart. The Troubles, from the late 1960s to the late 1990s. Over 3,500 people killed in 3 decades. The Good Friday Agreement, in 1998, finally brings something close to peace. Scotland gets its own parliament back in 1999. Wales gets an assembly. The United Kingdom, which spent centuries centralising power in London, starts sharing it back out. 21st century. The new millennium starts with optimism. The London Eye, a new skyline. Then Britain joins the war on terror. Afghanistan, Iraq. The decisions are controversial then and remain so now. On July 7th, 2005, 4 suicide bombers attack London's transport system. 52 people are killed. The next morning, Londoners get back on the tube. The 2008 financial crisis hits. Austerity follows. Public services are cut. The political mood sours. Then comes the question that reshapes everything. June 23rd, 2016. The Brexit referendum. 52% vote to leave the European Union. The result stuns the world. It stuns half of Britain. Years of political chaos follow. In January 2020, Britain formally leaves the EU. Weeks later, COVID-19 arrives. The NHS is pushed to its limits, but it holds. In September 2022, Queen Elizabeth II dies after 70 years on the throne. Charles III becomes king. The country mourns the only constant most Britons had ever known. And look out across the Channel. 21 miles of grey water separating these islands from the continent. That narrow gap has been both a shield and a prison. It kept Napoleon out. It kept Hitler out. It also kept Britain looking inward when the rest of Europe was building something new together. The United Kingdom has survived Roman occupation, Viking invasion, Norman conquest, civil war, plague, revolution, 2 world wars, and the loss of the largest empire in human history. 4 nations, forced together by geography and politics, held together by institutions and stubbornness. constantly arguing about who they are and what they want to be. It's messy, it's contradictory. A country that invented parliamentary democracy and ran concentration camps. That gave the world Shakespeare and the slave trade. That built the NHS and dismantled it through austerity. That voted to leave Europe and spent years wondering what it actually meant. But through every invasion and revolution and reinvention, these islands keep producing something. Ideas, institutions, arguments, music, literature, an unreasonable belief that a small, rainy country at the edge of Europe still has something important to say to the world. Maybe it does. Thanks for watching. Creating videos like this takes an enormous amount of research and time. It's mainly a passion project for me, piecing together thousands of years of history into one story. If you enjoyed this journey through the history of the United Kingdom, I'd really appreciate it if you'd hit the like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history. And let me know in the comments, what country or empire should I cover next? As always, we'll see you in the past.